Okay, go.
Welcome, everyone. We were just commenting on seeing lots of familiar faces in here. So welcome faculty, librarians, and instructional designers. It's exciting to have you all here today. We are here for the webinar, Expanding Open Educational Resources for the UNC System, Digital Course Enhancement Collections, and How Librarians Can Use Them. So we do have, of course, learning objectives in our webinar today. We have, for this webinar, you will learn about the UNC system digital course enhancement collections, how to support faculty on your campus using the collections, how to promote these collections on your campus as well, the why and how open resources contribute to the overall effort, and how OER was utilized to create better opportunities for access and equity. We placed this here. This is more information, and this link is actually going into the chat, so you'll have the link to refer back to it. But this is the announcement of the digital course enhancement resources that was released around the end of June, beginning of July. And it gives really good information about the background of the project, where the funding came from, and some of the objectives. So to give you a little bit of background, of course, the funding was allocated by the North Carolina legislature as a part of the CARES Act. We created digital course enhancement collections. Overall, there were 13 course-specific teams of disciplinary faculty supported by instructional designers and librarians. So these were really robust teams that pulled all of this content together in a very short amount of time. Faculty then also created implementation and process guides to help other faculty who might actually use these collections. They used curriculum maps and backward design to complete the collections, and they're designed by both topic and outcomes. Faculty also curated more than 7,500 open resources throughout these collections, so they are heavily OER dependent and very resourceful. We had an incredibly aggressive summer timeline. The first set of these was completed in a 5-week time period, and over 70 faculty and staff met 24 hours a week. It was very intensive to complete this work. There were challenges. We have no common LMS for the UNC system. I think there were somewhere between 4 and 5 LMS systems across. And so we used as a final repository the UNC system's Google Drive space so that everyone had access to the same spaces, as well with OER, the same set of resources. Because we have so many folks on the call today, actually, could you virtually go in and raise your hand if you were one of the team members? If you know how to do it, or you can just wave. You can just wave, but there are a lot of folks. Yep, I see lots of hands going up. That's great. I should do a quick screen grab of that. There we go.
And now I've got to share.
All right. So we did have a specific set of librarians working on the across the teams this summer. Librarians typically did either 2 or 3 collections. Let's see, there we go. Those librarians included, I'm sorry, Michelle, could you just go back real quick?
Sorry.
Those librarians included Will Cross from NC State, myself, Sarah Falls at UNC School of the Arts, Sam Harlow from UNC Greensboro, and Jeff McAdams from UNC Charlotte. And you'll see here on this page, and this is just one of 2 slides, this really impressive list of our colleagues. This includes faculty subject matter experts, instructional designers, and the librarians that I just mentioned. And it shows you the range of collections that we created: Calculus 1, Introductory Statistics, General Biology, Anatomy and Physiology, Chemistry 1, Chemistry 2, Organic Chemistry, and Introductory Financial Accounting. This effort continued into the later summer, where 3 additional courses were created. So this is kind of an overlap of the two. Microeconomics, macroeconomics were done in the early phase. Calculus 2, pre-calculus, and quantitative reasoning were done in the later phase. And this later phase actually completed the math pathways courses, which is a really important piece of this as well. Our ongoing OER project team is above here too, and we'll talk about this later in our efforts later in the webinar. So now we're going to have some live demonstrations so that we can dive into a few of the classes. We'll have Will Cross presenting pre-calculus, and then Jeff McAdams looking at quantitative reasoning and chemistry.
Thanks so much. The scariest moment in Zoom is when you share your screen. So I'm going to try to do that now. I hope everybody can see now. We're loading up the page, and I think the link should also be in the chat. Is everybody seeing the UNC System course collection libraries?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. So you can see we've been deliberate about sort of organizing and sequencing these, and we thought we'd start up here on the left with the pre-calculus course in particular. So you just click on that button to go in. You'll notice that each of these sites looks a little bit different. We wanted to give a lot of space for individual disciplines, for individual teams, and for different levels to be able to organize these sites in the way that made the most sense in that context, rather than sort of requiring a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach to it. You will, however, see some common elements on all of these sites. You're going to see a set of things that pre-calculus has done a nice job of just putting them all over in the left-hand nav bar here. An introductory webinar that was done for all of these, and the recording should be included on each of the sites. That's a really nice way if you want to do sort of a deeper, quick dive into an individual course collection. You can hear the experts who participated in creating it talking about here's how we made that choice, here's what we were thinking here, etc. You can also meet the team, which is sort of a neat thing to do. But I wanted to actually start here with the implementation guide, and you can see you can find that here over in the left nav bar or in the center. I'll click here on the center to take us there. These implementation guides are a really nice place to start if you want to either understand what was happening with the resource or start digging into the resource. You can see, you can scroll through and see there's a nice introduction. There's a discussion about the process that was used for making decisions about different sort of what was covered and how do we think about these issues. The thing that I wanted to point you to specifically is down on the next page. It's in this document section. This takes you to the SLOs. And I think that's a really nice way to dig into the way these things are structured and the way they're useful. We're going to take just a second to load, but basically what you're going to see here is pre-calculus does a really nice job of saying that you'll find a set of modules, introduction to functions, and then the ones further down. Within that, there are a variety of concepts we wanted to present: function notation, domain, composition, etc. And then a set of learning outcomes that are related to each of those concepts that exist inside those modules. So if you want to use the entire resource sort of from top to bottom, from soup to nuts, you can just start with introduction and move down through, you know, polynomial functions, rational functions, etc. Or if you say, I really want to do some mixing and matching and some tailoring, I want to take just some of the materials, you can just go into the section on rational functions or whatever it is, make sure those learning outcomes align with the learning outcomes you're thinking about, and then start finding materials and resources that align with that work. And that's the next thing I want to show you. This team and all the teams were really great about identifying a diverse set of relevant resources to what we're presenting. So you can see pre-calculus identified a set of really strong video resources, and we've gotten a lot of nice feedback on the video resources in particular. So kudos to the pre-calc team. We also grounded all this work in a set of online open textbooks. So the structure of a textbook, the sort of textbookiness is really important. And so we made sure those were included as well. Also pulled together a set of activities to help thinking about how do we teach this stuff, what's some more active opportunities to do teaching and learning beyond just sort of showing content to folks. And the Desmos activities in particular, folks have had really nice things to say about, so I'll recommend those in particular. And then a set of worksheets, investigations, and that sort of thing for some more active learning. and then the sort of formative and summative assessments as well. So that implementation guide has a lot of good materials about the where and why and how it works, and they point directly to these resources. And that's the last thing I want to show you in this site in particular. There's a link in the document we're in, but also if you go over to the left nav, you can find a resource collection at the bottom. And if you click on that, you can see we've also pulled out the individual resources. So if you said, this all sounds great, I really need some videos, you can jump right into the video resources section. Just click on there, and that'll take you to a site that will load in just a second that walks you through, okay, this is the module I'm interested in, this is the concept I'm trying to cover. And then you can click on those individual video resources and find some great videos aligned with the materials we've talked about. We were also very deliberate about describing the sources of those videos. So many of the videos in pre-calc came from Khan Academy, from Teru's Chalk Talk, and from the UNCG Math Help Center. So we've broken those out and said, if it comes from Khan Academy, here are the copyright issues that are existing there, here's how we talk about that resource, and then you can scroll down and find the relevant Khan Academy videos for introduction to functions, for domain, and so on down the line. So that's my sort of nickel tour of the pre-calculus site in particular. I know we've got several team members from PCalc on the call. I don't want to sort of surprise anybody, but if any team members want to jump in and share any insights or observations or any cool stuff that I didn't highlight, there's a great opportunity to do that. And if not, I'll turn it over to Jeff to show you another great example.
Thanks, Will. That was great. Sharing my screen here now. So this is the main course collection page, and I'm going to go into quantitative reasoning first. These are all courses that Will was the librarian for, and they look a little different. Like he mentioned, each page has its own look and organization. Up here at the top, you'll see they have the link to their introductory webinar, which has the whole team explaining, you know, how they built this collection and their process and why they did things the way they did them. They also have a page for that development process where they talk about the student learning outcomes and the different resources that they used and the different weeks. And they also have a link for the team. They have a page about how to implement this content into your course. Let me go back to the homepage, and here's the faculty resource guide where, again, this is the faculty instructors explaining for the future faculty member who may want to use pieces of this collection, how it's organized, how they came to collect this material, and how they envision you can possibly use it. I'm just going to show you an example of some of these collection materials they have. So I clicked on module 1. I've already set it up here. It'll take you to the Google Drive folder. And I clicked on the assessments. They have it organized by, you know, the learning outcome, activities, and assessments for each topic. So here are the activities for topic 1.2. They'll give you the module objectives, the lesson, and then the student learning outcome right here. And they give you an interactive site here for suggested projects where a student can go in, and this is a nice interactive website. They even have challenges that you can work synchronously, like in a breakout room where students can work in groups to interact with something and check their work and submit it and show the results to the class. They also have an out-of-class activity here. This is an example of something from Lumen Learning where they can do basically an activity or an assignment and get results from it. And then more interactive stuff. They also have a problem set that this one's from Lumen Learning. The teacher would have to have a password created for the class, but it's free to use. And then, sorry, let me see if I can move this around. Okay, and then here's the assessment they have for this module. So this one they've used My Open Math, and they've given you the how to access it, the information there, and it's again an online tool for the students. They can submit their answers there and get the results through that. So that's one of the assessments. And if I go back to here, it'll go through all the different modules like that, where they'll have activities, assessments, and learning outcomes. So that's introduction to quantitative reasoning. Let me go back to, sorry, I'm going back to chemistry 1. Let me just show you chemistry 1. It looks a little different, of course. They have their student learning outcomes put right here, a page for the design process, and we can explore the module content here. Under Enhance Your Course, they have the faculty resource guide for chemistry, and that's again the guide where it'll tell you where, like from the faculty's perspective, like here's how we decided to collect the things that we did, and here's our reasoning for it, and here's how it's organized and all that stuff. So the faculty resource guides for these collections are really key for another faculty member to use when they want to use this content. And they've divided up into the different modules they have. Here's module 2. I clicked on module 2, and here is the table of contents. They have the overview, the outcomes, teaching tips. They even have more resources for diversity and equity and inclusion if you wanted to include more resources for that as examples in your course. I clicked on 2.1 just to show you, like, again, they've organized this where they have learning objectives. Then they show you all the different textbook materials. So this would be the reading materials that students would read. This is from OpenStax, and this is from LibreText. Both are OER Creative Commons licensed texts. And it's nice that they give you the learning objectives for each of the different sections of the books. They also have video resources here, like Will mentioned. They have the license, so the reuse license if you're going to use it, and they tell you the clips and the description and the license for all of those. And I want to show you another one. They have an interactive simulation building an ad, and this is also a CC licensed thing. Students can design their own atom. So I'm just going to show you here, like here's something that they can put together and play with, and it changes the more you put in there, and you can say, is it stable or unstable, and all those things. So it's a nice interactive feature, and they have quite a lot of those throughout this course. They have more simulations, and it ties it to a specific learning outcome, and they'll tell you what kind of Creative Commons license they have for those. And then they have, a study guide, worksheets, textbook exercises, and so on and so forth. So even though all of these are kind of organized differently, they'll have the same components to them, which will help, explain how they tie the collection content to a learning outcome. And you can, either watch the webinar or look at the faculty resource guide to try to see how you can integrate this into your course. So I'm going to stop sharing and give it back to Sarah.
Great, thank you, Jeff and Will. So we wanted to briefly talk about some ways that as librarians we can engage with the collection and share it with faculty. So one of the first steps that we can do is to become more familiar with these collections and the common features within them. Will and Jeff gave us a great overview of 3 of the 13 different collections. And as they mentioned, the faculty resources guides or the implementation guides are extremely helpful to better understand how the faculty creators envisioned how these collections could be used to enhance and support common course curriculums across the system. These guides include ways to communicate to students about these materials and ways to use them in LMSs and more. Reviewing the recorded webinars will also give you more background on the individual collections, including how they're organized and how the faculty team approached the project. The collections contain a wide variety of learning resources. So as Will and Jeff showed, some of these are full open educational resources and which would allow faculty to customize and adapt them. And then others are under copyright, but used with permission. So this is a great way to partner with faculty and an opportunity to identify resources that we already have in our library collections that can be used alongside these materials. Additionally, some of these collections are built with open textbooks as one of their key resources. For example, one of the chemistry collections uses an OpenStax book. So this could be an avenue to collaborate with your bookstore on potentially identifying print options for students. So as librarians, you're the ideal partners for reaching out and supporting faculty with these collections. This slide covers just a sample of ideas to get us started on ways to share the collections. So as the experts in this area, please add suggestions or ideas that you found helpful in the work that you do with sharing new collections with your faculty. We would love for you to add your thoughts to the chat. One of the biggest opportunities for sharing these collections is engaging in conversations around OER. So these can start with faculty teaching courses related to these collections, but it could also involve expanding it to department chairs or program directors. Also, partnering with your Center for Teaching and Learning is another avenue to take. For example, hosting a webinar on campus that features faculty who are using these resources, or even highlighting additional materials or support provided by the library, or inviting instructional designers to share best practices on adding some of these resources to your campus LMS. There will likely be a lot of questions that come up from this, but we hope that this is an opportunity to engage in conversations around these collections specifically, but also OER, Creative Commons, and using digital resources. So to go along with the outreach that we shared in these slides, we also wanted to highlight some feedback from faculty who are already using some of these collections in their classes. One of the themes that comes out from these perspectives is that the resources in these collections can enhance courses, especially in the virtual environment, leading to more engagement with students. This is particularly noted in the third perspective on the slide from a faculty member at UNC Charlotte. They said, I quote, "I know there are quite a few outstanding aspects of the enhancement link that we will use to explain, motivate, and give a deeper understanding of the material." So these perspectives and comments are available for you to use in your discussions with faculty on campus, so we hope that it's helpful. As we mentioned earlier, we hope these collections will lead to engagement with faculty on your campus. The collections provide course curriculum support, especially in the virtual environment. So using faculty and student feedback, if they use it within their courses, can help with future outreach. Additionally, it's another opportunity for offering support to identify additional materials, whether it's OERs or library materials. And in the coming months, more teams will be expanding these collections to include more subjects. So we hope you'll come back to the course collection pages to keep updated on that. And I will turn it back over to Will.
Thanks, Jeannie. So that's the current project. We're really proud of the work that so many people did, and we're really excited about the opportunity there. We wanted to take a minute to highlight the open education section because we think it's really critical to the success of the program, but also because it's an area that this team is going to be working on over the next couple of months. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the sort of the why and the how and the opportunities of OER in particular. I probably won't blow anybody's mind if I tell you that textbooks are really expensive. But I will say, when I showed this image on the left, the hey students, don't worry about textbook costs, you can just donate your plasma to the team earlier this morning, everybody assumed it was a joke. It was like a gag. Oh, somebody made that to illustrate the textbooks are really expensive. No, these are real flyers for a real company that are on a lot of campuses across the country, including my own. So sometimes it's helpful to remember that like the cost issue is really real. So a free resource really does have meaning. We like to talk about OER as sometimes free and better, or at least free and can be better in some ways because of a set of permissions that we often call the 5 R's that you can see here. We'll talk some more about that going forward, but I wanted to sort of introduce that framing that OER are important all the time because they reduce costs and create opportunities for better, more culturally relevant, more tailored resources. On the next slide, I think we make the point that OER are sort of especially useful in this moment, right? Students are losing their jobs and living at home and getting their Wi-Fi in the parking lot of a Target and that sort of thing. So this is particularly a moment where reducing costs and reducing barriers is particularly important for addressing the digital divide, for making it easier to transition from in-person to digital or that sort of thing. So OER sort of always useful, especially useful in this moment in particular. And on the next slide, we get into that a little bit more. This is a quote we got from a student who is using open educational resources, and the student says all the things I said, probably better, right? These are really high quality resources that are useful in a lot of ways, and we've got a large body of research that indicates the efficacy of OER is as good or better than traditional resources. Removing the financial burden means a lot to the student as well. But more than that, the student ends on this idea that I'm thankful for the instructor for working so hard. And that really points to the idea that thanks for saving me money. That means a lot. Thanks for building materials that are tailored in a different way. But also thanks for acknowledging that this is a really hard moment for everybody. Thanks for acknowledging that and taking a concrete step to remove that barrier. That means something too. And so OER, along with the other sort of concrete things that we've been talking about, it has that sort of empathetic piece, right? OER it's not just about money and pedagogy, it's about empathy as well. So we think that's pretty important. On the next slide, along with the pedagogy and the money and the empathy, open educational resources are often also really important for sustainability in a lot of different ways. Again, there's a pretty robust body of research that indicates that students take fewer courses, drop out of courses, fail courses, etc., because of the cost of textbooks. So to the extent that an institution is concerned with path towards graduation or retaining students when we're all worried about enrollment numbers, OER can be a really powerful part of that conversation as well. So there's the human cost, and there's also the sort of institutional sustainability piece. So OER for finances, for pedagogy, for empathy, for sustainability, and then for equity as well, right? And this is a study that came out a little over a year ago, and it's been duplicated in a number of different contexts. And what it finds probably shouldn't surprise anybody. OER helps everybody. OER makes teaching and learning better for all students. But particularly, OER helps students who were at a particular disadvantage. Part-time students, Pell-eligible students, non-white students, first-generation students, the students who are struggling the most, who are facing the highest barriers and carrying the heaviest burdens, benefit the most from open educational resources. So that's maybe the last reason that we really wanted to push the idea that open education can be a really powerful and important part of this conversation. So we're doing some work to think about how to highlight all of that stuff for folks who are using the collection so that they can use it sort of to its full potential. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jeannie now to talk some about the work that we're doing in that space.
Okay, Thanks, Will. So right now we have a project underway that's an OER project, and we're creating an OER collection to kind of explain the fundamentals of open education and also to help prepare faculty to include open educational resources in their courses. Additionally, members of this team are going to be focusing on setting up an OER Commons instance for the UNC system course collections. Also paired with both of those pieces is a series of 8 hands-on virtual workshops that will be happening over the next 2 months. And these will feature faculty and librarian speakers. And these webinars will address common questions and problems that have come up with instructors using open educational resources. And we hope that this will encourage the faculty to use the UNC system course collections. So I wanted to highlight the series that we have coming up. So starting every Friday, so it kicks off today, we're going to be hosting the workshops through about mid-November. So we hope that you'll join us for future workshops. These are some of the topics that we're going to be covering, and a lot of these topics we're really excited about. Just pulling out some from the list, how to localize OER, how to make it accessible and reduce the digital divide, and also how to build more inclusive materials. So please also consider sharing these workshops with faculty, especially if they're interested in OER, the course collections, or if they're already using them in their classes. And I do want to note that these webinars will be shared specifically with librarians through the library directors in the ULAC group. So keep posted on that. So this is the team that is working on this project. We have a team of librarians and instructional designer, and we come from a wide range of backgrounds, including instructional design, reference, student success, technical services, and scholarly communication. And we wanted to note some ways that you can get involved if you're interested. The UNC System University Library Advisory Council, or ULAC, has a committee that's focused on textbook affordability and open educational resources called the ERAC Group, or Educational Resources Affordability Committee. I do have a link on the slide there if you'd like to get more information, but if you are interested, please reach out to us. We are more than happy to talk about what we're doing, and then if you're interested in getting involved, how to do that. Additionally, like we mentioned, the previous recorded webinars will be really helpful to you as far as learning more about the course collections. And then finally, if you have questions, comments, or reviews about these projects, you can reach out to Michelle Soler at the UNC System office. So her email is listed there. So we want to take opportunity to open up for questions if you have any, and thank you so much for joining us today. And as far as questions, if you want to drop it in your questions in the chat, you can also, I believe, unmute yourself if you prefer to ask that way.
Hi, can I ask a quick question just instead of typing? I feel it more practical.
Of course.
This is a music librarian speaking from Elizabeth State University, Norhak. I see the benefits of OERs. As the problem with textbooks, they are so fluid, and they need to be updated and modified content-wise, especially, for STEM. And that's one of the main reasons they cannot be part of the permanent collection of libraries. And their editions come and go, but monster bookstores, they take advantage of it and demand really high price on them and commercialize it. And it becomes a problem for faculty to get a hold on the content, you know, and they cannot have control much over their curriculum that they want to teach the way that they want. And it's a win-win situation. I see that, you know, that gives students free resources and more control over faculty and better purpose for libraries to help using that content creation to elevate their users, you know. It's a savior for libraries, and I see this is the future for libraries, modern libraries. However, still, there are some issues starting the quality control of this content. And coming to my question, the copyright, especially, yeah. So as librarians, actually, we should also, in my humble opinion, you know, educate ourselves. Of course, you know, educate ourselves about those glitches. You know, what are those glitches, so we know on top of the benefits of OERs. Like, for example, it's not a perfect system, although it's a hot topic for libraries, but it's not like, there's some glitches in terms of quality control. How do we handle that? How do we educate our content creators in terms of patching and creating their OERs? And I really like the implementation guide, but maybe we need to talk more about how we handle educating our content creators for about on that regard. Makes sense? I'm not sure if I'm putting that in the right way. So my question is, what are those glitches on top of it? You know, they are wonderful tools. Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're singing my song. I'm somebody who spends my day thinking about copyright and OER, so you couldn't have asked a question that put a bigger smile on my face. I think your point is a really good one, that OER has all this potential, but it's not a magic wand that just fixes everything. We have to understand what's happening, know how to use that stuff, and then actually engage with it. So that was part of the thinking behind the workshop series that we mentioned. There is one on sort of copyright and how does that relate to open educational resources. There are also some other good educational resources about open educational resources out there. I linked to a series of webinars that I was part of in the spring out of the American University College of Law that focused on the copyright piece in particular. So that's a set of 10 or so sort of deep dives into how does this address the digital divide? How does this build inclusivity, et cetera? There are those things for how do we make more inclusive resources, or how do we localize those resources? There are huge sets of materials out there that we hope the webinar series will sort of help familiarize people with. But as is always the case, skilling up is just an ongoing process. So anything we can do to help with that, we're excited to do.
Thank you. And a following question also, not every university has the powerful resources as the flagship big universities, and they are leading in this initiative, and I really appreciate it. But for small, medium libraries who are running understaffed and who has, you know, less, we don't have, for example, a copyright librarian position or like specific position for each, you know, area. So for what is your suggestion for these kind of small libraries who wants to follow this wonderful OER initiative, new trend in the library world, but you know, what else we can do is only collaborate within the UNC system, because we're in the UNC system. I'm talking so much, but bottom line is, you know, because libraries are small libraries are with limited resources. Perhaps the biggest advice for these kind of libraries would be more being advocate and collaborating with the English department, with faculty members. I'm just thinking loudly here. I don't know. So that is another question that comes to my mind. What would we doing in terms of also educating the smaller libraries?
I think
I can take a stab at that. So I'm Michelle Soler, and I'm at the system office, and we are reaching out to all of the department chairs at all of the universities and trying to reach out to all of the faculty through the department chairs, which I know sometimes doesn't work, but we're doing our best to really get the word out there. And this series of webinars will help. We had another series of webinars over the summer. We also share this with the system-wide faculty assembly, so all of your representatives from Elizabeth City should have heard that and be bringing these things back. We share it through CAO, but we all work on campuses and have worked on campuses. We know that the trail of communication is just sometimes difficult, especially now when we're always on email and Zoom. But I definitely hear what you're saying, and I'll make a couple more calls on your behalf or on Elizabeth City and make sure that everybody has what they need.
And
Thank you.
I can speak to the small campus perspective as well. So I'm at School of the Arts. You know, we have about 1,400 students. And I went to our Division of Liberal Arts, who teaches our Gen Ed core, about 6 months ago or right before the crisis, and said, who here on the faculty has ever heard of OER? And not a single hand raised. So I'm starting off there. I've been doing a number of workshops, webinars, and that sort of thing on both just this sort of broader concept of open. You know, what is open access? What are materials in the arts that can be used that are out there? Those kinds of places are good places to start. I'm also looking pretty deeply at library resources that are available campus-wide so that we can create, you know, some textbook affordability kinds of conversations, you know, and that sort of thing. So you sort of have to start off small, and you have to see where your faculty is in the process and do a little bit of education to kind of get them going. So like I see this as sort of for my campus at the very beginning of the process. So in terms of content creation, we're probably a couple of years out, right? But within the next year or two, they're going to know a lot. They're going to get really sick of hearing from me about OER.
Thank you. Thank you so much for addressing my questions patiently. And this is really good. I'm really liking it.
I see we did have a few other questions in the chat and more from UNC Charlotte asked if there were any plans to expand the program to cover more courses, including the humanities and social sciences. Michelle, you want to take that?
I'm on mute. No. I should stay on mute. I think we do have more plans. We definitely have more desires to expand the collections. We have a list standing and ready to go of social sciences and humanities collections that we'd like to work on. We, like everyone else, are in financial funding issues, and so we're waiting. But at some point, maybe in the spring, I'm looking forward to doing that. How's that for non-committal?
All right, any other questions?
Enoch says more are peer reviewed for quality. Over 65% of open textbook library are peer reviewed. It's a good point.
Yeah, and one little piece that we didn't talk about, but these courses were heavily supported by OpenStax texts. So I think in the first set, I think something like 9 out of the 10 collections rather, heavily used OpenStax resources. One other piece I would like to note, since we have so many librarians on the call, is that this year the Open Education Network's OER certificate program has just opened for applications. It is fully online, and it's actually a little bit of a cheaper date this year because it is online. So if you want to certify as an OER, I guess, specialist, I think it's a year-long cohort. fully online, and it's you can apply. We have a system-wide membership into OEN, so that does give you a little bit of a discount in terms of that. So if you can find institutional support for that, and you have an interest, that might be a way to educate yourself so you can better educate those on your campus.
There are also scholarships for underrepresented institutions and folks as well. So it can get pretty darn affordable for sure.
And you teach in it, Will, right?
Jeannie and I, yeah.
All right.
In fact, in about an hour, we're going to be doing a webinar on how great it is.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thanks so much, everybody.